I believe Jim could have done a better job than me. I don't doubt that. But I have to be willing whenever the Lord wants me to, even though if I can't do as good as the brother that any brother, God wants me to do my best when I'm called on. I thought about Jesus. He was in Judea one time and doing the work of God and miracles after miracles. And the Jews there, they got evil. They wanted to kill him. So he left Judea. He went into a certain place, and there was a man that was a sinner that invited him in and he went in to eat with him. And while he was in there was a certain woman that came in, and she got down at his feet and began to wash his feet with the tears that came from her eyes. And she began to dry his feet from those tears with her hair. And her name was Mary. And Jesus remembered this, and he reproved the man across the table that invited him in. He reproved him and showed him where that this woman had more appreciated him than he had to get it so. And time went on after Mary had left out of the house. Jesus was close to Judea, but he had left Judea because the Jews tried to kill him. And so he got word from one of the ladies, Mary and Martha. He got word from them that Lazarus, his friend, God loved Lazarus. God loved the two ladies, but not with an earthly love. He loved them with a godly love. And so he received word that he whom thou lovest, Lord, he's sick. And so the Lord meditated on it, and he told the disciples, we'll go into Judea again. And they said, well, Lord, the Jews tried to kill you before when you went in there, so why go back? But the Lord said, our friend Lazarus, he sleepeth. And they said, well, Lord, if he sleepeth, he doeth well. But the Lord come out plain and said, Lazarus is dead, and I go to awake him. And he said, I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent that you may believe. Now what he meant by that, if we'd have been there, I'd have healed him and he wouldn't have died, and therefore I wouldn't have had the chance to make you understand that I'm able to raise the dead. Now that's what he was getting at. And so he said he received word from them, and so he waited about 4 days. And after 4 days, he went. And Martha heard about him when he was a little ways from the house. She went to him and she told him, Lord, if you'd have been here, my brother would not have died. And Jesus said, thy brother I shall raise again. But she said, Lord, I know he'll raise again. In the resurrection, at the last day, Jesus said, I am the resurrection. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, Jesus said, yet shall he live. And he that liveth and believeth in me, Jesus said, he'll never die. Do you believe this, Martha? And Martha said, yea, Lord. I believe that you're the Christ, the Son of God, that should come into the world. But Martha said, Lord, I know that if you'd have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And so she went her way, and she came to Martha. I'm persuaded she got down close to her ear and said, Martha, the Master wants to see you. And boy, that really cheered her up. She got up real quick, and she went to where he was. And so the Jews there, they thought she's gone to the grave to weep, and they decided to follow her. And I remember when Mary got to Jesus, she said the same thing. Lord, if you'd have been here, my brother would not have died. And I believe the same thing myself, that if the Lord had been here at that time, he wouldn't have let Lazarus died. Why, preacher? Because he loved him. He wouldn't have let him die. Therefore, the disciples would not have seen him raise him from the dead. And he said, I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there to the intent that you may believe. Do you get the point? He was saying, it's better that you see me raise the dead than it is to heal the sick. And so, my friend, he went. He saw the Jews. They were weeping. And somebody in the crowd said, could not this man who have healed the sick, could not he have kept Lazarus from dying? And Jesus groaned in the spirit that got to his heart. And finally Jesus said, where have you laid him? And they showed him. And so Jesus went over to the side probably. And I remember he lifted up his eyes toward heaven. And there he prayed. And he said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me and that you hear me always. But because of the people that stand by, I said it, Father, that they may believe that you have sent me. And he told them, take away the stone. Lord, by this time he's been dead already 4 days, and by this time he stinketh. But listen, when Martha said he stinketh, the Lord said, don't you remember that I told you that if you would believe, you should see the glory of God. And so, my friend, the Lord had him to take away the stone. And he told them to take away the stone. They did. And he got over. I don't know how far from where he was standing, but he looked toward the tomb. And from his heart he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. Lazarus' heart began to pump blood. Life moved into his body. Lazarus moved and got up. and Lazarus began to walk. He was clothed in grave clothes, and so on. And his face was bound about with a napkin. But the Lord said, "Loose him and let him go." Thank God I remember the time when the devil had me bound. And it was hard for me to give up sin because I was a sinner. But God looked down and said, "Loose him and let him go." And I felt the forgiveness of God. And I got up and I joined a whole bunch of young people. I was young then myself. And I joined them in praising God. I went home that night and I walked down a railroad bed. I walked about a mile. I looked down at the railroad and it looked like it'd been washed with a clean water. Yeah, it looked like it'd been washed with the clean water, the cinders. I looked up to heaven, and the sky looked like it'd been painted a fresh blue. And I went home. I went in the home place where Mom was. And I said, "Mother, I got saved." Oh, she was happy. And so, I thank God I was baptized. Wasn't long till I was called to preach. When I was called to preach, I left my desire to do much fishing. Because I used to love to fish. I like it a little bit now, but if it hinders me from going to a church service, then I can't do it. And when I'd go down to the river to fish, I didn't enjoy it no more. Had my heart on preaching for God. He called me to preach, and people knew I was called because God was in my life. And I could preach with His power, or He preached me. For 60-some years, the Lord's preached me off and on. It has to be off and on. It can't be a steady thing. But I preached real often for the Lord in revivals, in West Virginia, in Kentucky, in Ohio. One time I even went to the edge of Chicago preaching. And the Lord blessed me. And so I say unto you tonight, hold out, you that know the Lord. Remember, the Lord is able to raise you from the dead. After a while, He'll call you home. And if you're ready, you'll enjoy the trip. I'll guarantee it. I've not made the trip yet. I'll probably make it before long. But I believe if a man's a Christian, God calls him, I believe he'll enjoy the crossing of Jordan. Why do you believe that, preacher? Right after my wife died, I'm going to do this and I'm going to hush. I know, now, Jim, I haven't done a great job, but I've done my best. But look, right after my wife, Dora, died, I remember hearing a voice in my room, and I actually heard a voice as same as a man being there. And it was a gentle voice, the voice of an elder man, but it was like a father. And he said to me, I'll carry you across Jordan. Said, don't worry, I'll carry you across Jordan. That's what I'm waiting for. God bless you. I hope you enjoyed what little bit I said, and I'll turn it back to Jim.